The Battle of France is over, Churchill says. The Battle of Britain has just begun. Hitler, until the middle of June, or until actually early July 1940, has hoped that his diplomatic gambit would pay off and that Britain would accept a negotiated peace. What Hitler would get for that, by the way, is the British Empire and the Royal Navy working side by side with it. If America ever thought about entering the war against Germany, Britain would be Germany's ally and would really strengthen Germany's position. So there was something clever about Hitler's planning, but the British are not playing ball, so Hitler orders preparations for Operation Sea Lion, which is seizing control of the narrowest spot of the Channel at the Straits of Dover and landing an army in southern England. But before the landing takes place, before the ocean area of the English Channel can be seized by whatever German naval forces they have and air forces that they have, the Germans need to achieve air superiority over Britain. That means that the British Air Force, the Royal Air Force, must be swept from the skies and destroyed on the ground so that the Germans can basically fly at will over British land, cities, ports, and so forth. This Battle of Britain is going to be unlike any battle in human history because it will be an air battle. Like Napoleon before him, Hitler is a brave man on land but a coward at sea. He, like Napoleon, does not understand naval warfare. Naval warfare and army warfare and land warfare are very different things. The German Air Force is given a job to achieve air superiority. And up until now, nothing has stood against the German Air Force. They have the best fighter plane, they think, in the world, the Messerschmitt Bf 109. Well, the Germans begin a series of attacks along British shipping in the English Channel. Their hope is to draw the British Air Force out into open battle where the Germans can shoot them down and destroy them. However, the Germans and many British did not take into account a man named Field Marshal Sir Hugh Dowding. Dowding is the head of Fighter Command, and Dowding is the man who helped bring radar to the Royal Air Force and to Britain. In the years leading up to the Second World War, Dowding, a theorist par excellence about what electronics and air warfare can do, comes up with the system of radar stations that are going to exist, be built all along Britain's southern and eastern coasts, and the stations inland. And the field stations that control these radar stations. What the Germans count on is the British Air Force taking to the skies and fighting the Germans to protect British shipping off the coast of England, and then fighting to stop the Germans from bombing England's cities. They assume that the Germans are going to have to, the Germans assume that the British are going to have to fly what are called standing patrols. In other words, to waste time and tire their men out and wear their equipment out, flying around waiting for the Germans to attack. But Dowding's system of radar and command stations and ground control requires none of that. Radar uses radio pulses to send out a signal that if it strikes the aluminum of an aircraft, beep, will send back a reflection, boop, and that reflection, boop, boop, can be identified by a skilled radar operator. With radar, you don't need to fly standing patrols. What you can do is keep your men relaxed on the ground, your aircraft in tip-top shape, and as the enemy organizes itself over the French shoreline, you can count how many planes they have, what formation they're in, what course they're on, what altitude they're at, how fast they're going, where they're turning. And that allows you a precision of control that no one has seen before in air warfare. But Dowding has it set up. The radar stations report into these command stations, and the command stations are underground, and they're the nexus of vast telephone and radio networks. And the radar station reports German planes over the channel, such a course and speed and altitude. They report that into a command station who orders fighters to take off. Now, Dowding's other plan is, we're not going to try to stop the Germans. We're not going to try to prevent them from bombing. No, we would waste forces. The whole name of the game is to stay alive. We're not going to defeat every German attack. We're not going to stop every German attack from happening. We are going to stay alive. We are going to keep Fighter Command fighting and intact. So if a German force of 50 planes is going to go after Dorchester or Yarmouth or London, not London yet. If they're going to go after a British town, we're not going to send up sufficient forces to stop them. What we're going to do is send forces up to shoot some down as they go by. We're going to wither the enemy. We're not going to try to stop them. We're going to shoot some down and get out. Go in, shoot a few down, get out. Go in, shoot a few down, get out. What this will do is it will wear down the German aircraft. Also, the German aircraft don't have the fuel to linger over British targets very long. So we might actually turn some attacks back by hitting them hard. This is a complex and subtle strategy. And at first, the Germans and the British don't understand it. The British fighter group in the south of England does understand it. But there's a British fighter commander in central eastern England who doesn't, and who doesn't cooperate as fully as he should. And he keeps planes, his name is Trafford Mallory, he keeps planes from the attack because what he wants to do is send up a massive big wing of fighters to actually stop the Germans in their tracks. Dowding, his commander, doesn't want that to happen. But Trafford Mallory does his own thing and he gets away with it for political reasons. In any case, Dowding is able to control a sufficient number of fighter bases, so this is what the Royal Air Force begins to do. And the Germans are so upset that when Marshal Goering asks, what can I do to help you bring victory, some German pilots in a smart alecky way say, get us Spitfires. What are Spitfires? The German fighter is the Messerschmitt Bf 109. It's faster than the British planes, it climbs a little bit more quickly, and it has a heavier gun, a cannon through the propeller designed to shoot down bombers and a few light machine guns. The British have two planes to face it. The Hawker Hurricane is a conventional single-wing fighter that is almost as fast as the German and almost as maneuverable and has 8 light machine guns. And the Hurricane can't really hold its own against German fighters, but it can shoot down German bombers very well, thank you very much. So the Hurricane is tasked with hitting German bombers. The premier British fighter is called the Supermarine Spitfire. It is an elegant racing plane. It was designed originally as a racing plane, and it is more maneuverable than the German plane. It can climb faster than the German plane. The German plane can dive faster. The Spitfire is the first aircraft that the German Luftwaffe has met that can meet it on even terms. And the British start inflicting 2-to-1, 3-to-1, 4-to-1 casualties on the Germans. For every British plane shot down, 2 or 3 or 4 German planes are shot down. So Dowding's plan to wither the Luftwaffe seems to be working. The Luftwaffe, by August, sends up a massive force in what Goering called an Aldertag, an Eagle Day, designed to draw the British into the air and shoot them all down in one day. That falls apart and fails. So after the failure of the Aldertag in August, the high command of the German Luftwaffe, the German Air Force, orders that the attacks will focus on British fighter bases and radar stations. And for the next few weeks, the British fighter command starts losing sleep because their bases are continually being hit. The aircraft begin to wear out. The pilots begin to die. They begin to die for stupid reasons, for fatigue, more than for just being outfought. The radar stations and the command bunkers are targeted and hit, so Britain soon has gaps in its radar coverage. This maximum effort against Britain's fighter command and radar stations actually seems to be working. And then one of the great accidents of history happens and changes everything. A couple of German bombers has a navigational error, and they drop their bombs over the city of London, something that Hitler had absolutely forbidden. Hitler was trying still to keep things open so that an honorable peace could be made between the Britons and the Germans. When Hitler finally drops bombs on London, Churchill has an excuse. And the next night, he orders every British plane, every British bomber that could reach Berlin to hit Berlin. Now, there aren't many, and a lot of them break down on the way. But British bombs fall on the German capital city. Now, Hermann Goering, the rotund drug addict, friend of Hitler, who's the head of the German Air Force, famously said to the Russian ambassador Molotov, if British bombs ever fall on Berlin, you can call me Meyer, which is a Jewish name. Oh, that Goering, he was such a wit. You can call me a Jew if British bombs fall on Berlin. Well, British bombs fall on Berlin a couple of days after London is bombed. Hitler goes bug nuts, and he orders his Luftwaffe to stop whatever they're doing and bomb London to the ground. Burn it, blow it up, destroy it. Suddenly, London becomes the target for daylight and night attacks, which later will be called the London Blitz, the lightning of bombs, the lightning that comes down. But it's a turning point in the battle. The key to defending Britain isn't London. The key to defending Britain is maintaining fighter command as a fighting force. The Germans, by switching their attacks to London, give the fighter command a chance to relax, rest, regroup, rebuild their strength, and rebuild the radar stations and command bunkers. Now we come to September 15th, which is known as Battle of Britain Day in the British world, the British Commonwealth. The Germans have another Eagle Day attack, maximum effort, and by this point they expect that most of the Royal Air Force has been destroyed. But as the German planes come up, they notice two things. Massive numbers of British fighters are coming up to meet them, more than the British ever expected. And finally, Trafford Mallory's big wing comes from central eastern England to hit the Germans moving along the southeastern coast. The fact that Britain's fighter command seems stronger now than it was at the beginning of the battle breaks Hitler's will. Churchill personally witnesses this fight at one of the command bunkers. He's looking down from a second-floor balcony at a great map table where pieces are being moved to represent formations of German and British planes. By the end of the day, it becomes clear that Britain has again inflicted 2, 3, 4, 5 to 1 casualties on the Germans. And it becomes clear to Hitler that the British Air Force is not even close to being beaten. Well, he orders the next day, September 16th, Operation Sea Lion will be canceled. The Navy is no longer going to be expected to take command of the Channel, something they didn't think they could do anyway. And the Army no longer has to use a bunch of slow barges to try to cross one of the roughest patches of water in the world to land in Britain. By canceling Operation Sea Lion and failing to continue it next year, Hitler ensures that Britain will remain in the war, and Churchill ensures that Britain will remain in the war. And if Britain remains in the war, war ain't over yet.